Varkos tore the royal saddle open before Dragon King Severin March could finish calling Lorna Beck's compassion a threat to discipline. The sound was not a roar. It was leather, iron, and lacquered bone splitting across High-Rain's yard. Black straps snapped beneath the war dragon's jaws. Silver buckles struck the paving stones. The new command saddle collapsed between Varkos's foreclaws, in a ruin of velvet lining and dark metal. Lorna stood beside the harness house, while soldiers carried her confiscated patterns into the rain. Quartermaster Elispar did not move. Neither did Severin. A row of black needles gleamed beneath the torn lining. They were thin as thorns, angled toward the places where a dragon's shoulder joined the base of its wing. Lorna had spent 26 years shaping harnesses so scarred bodies could bear weight without being punished for surviving. She knew every pressure point a rider could use to guide a dragon. She also knew which ones could force obedience through pain. "Do not touch him," she said. 4 handlers had already reached for Varkos's restraint poles. Severin turned toward her. Rain silvered the black scales worked into his armor. Men often mistook his stillness for calm. Lorna had seen the same mistake made around dragons. "You no longer command this yard," he said. "No. But I know what he will do if those poles close around his neck." Elise stepped between them, her quartermaster's coat buttoned cleanly despite the weather. "The animal has rejected fitted military equipment in open court. Restraint is required." Varkos rejected pain. He destroyed royal property. He found what your inspectors missed. The nearest needle had caught beneath the dragon's lower tooth. Varkos shook his head once. The ruined saddle struck the stones hard enough to make the handlers step back. His left wing did not lift with the right. Rain had swollen the scar tissue, and the new saddle had settled lower than it would have in dry weather. The needles were not hidden from his body anymore. Old scar, new swelling. He had been flying with damage no one had entered on the yard board. Lorna walked toward him. A spear lowered across her path. "Stop," Severin said. She stopped because the spear point rested beneath her throat, not because his command deserved obedience. Behind her, royal officers carried out the wooden forms she and her late husband, Garrick Beck, had shaped by hand. Dragon ribs, wing roots, breastbone curves, records of bodies that had never matched military measurements. Elise had called the forms proof of softness. Severin had signed the seizure order. He had not designed the cruelty. That was what made the wound sharper. He had allowed a cleaner word discipline to wear it in public. Before the yard, he had declared that her softened designs taught exhausted dragons to excuse refusal. 8 years earlier, the yard had used the same word against Garrick: failure of command, loss of nerve, negligent release of a royal mount. No record had mentioned the torn saddle recovered beside his body. No witness had been allowed to say why he cut it loose. Varkos lowered his head toward Lorna. Not submission, recognition of the hand that had once measured him without hurting him. His scarred muzzle stopped inches from the spear. "Make them lower it," Lorna said. "You are standing beside an unstable war dragon. He is standing beside an unstable saddle." A murmur moved through the riders. Elise's gaze went to the needles. Hidden reinforcement points prevent lateral drift during combat turns. They are driven toward nerve beds, only under full pressure. "Not enough to kill," Lorna said. "Enough to make refusal feel worse than obedience. That is not their approved function. It is their physical one." Severin lifted one broken edge with the tip of his sword. The lining peeled back farther. There were not 3 needles. There were 2 rows. Some were clean. Others carried dark residue near the tips. Varkos recoiled before the blade touched them. Severin saw that. A question entered his face. "How long has he worn this pattern?" "The command model was introduced after the Eastern losses," Elise said. "It prevents hesitation during ascent." "How long?" 3 winter campaigns." Lorna looked at Varkos's uneven wing. "Then he has been telling you for 3 years. He completed every deployment. Survival is not consent. This is a war yard, Mistress Beck. It became one by spending dragons faster than it could replace them." Severin faced her. "You softened military harnesses without authorization. I widened load paths for scar tissue. You removed command pressure. I removed pain no rider should need. And when dragons refuse in battle, then find out whether they are refusing the enemy or the hand on their wounds." Silence spread across the yard. The handlers tightened their grips as Varkos's pupils narrowed. "Lower every pole," Lorna said. No one obeyed. so she moved first. The harness house keys still hung at her belt. The seizure clerk had taken the property seal before taking the woman who understood the gates. Lorna crossed to the main flight winch and drove the iron lock through its wheel. The departure gates shuddered to a stop. Warning bells sounded above High Rain's yard. One after another, the 6 auxiliary launch doors dropped into their stone channels. Riders shouted. Elise wheeled toward her. "What have you done?" Grounded the war wing. "You have no authority. I have the only key to the manual release." Severin's expression hardened. "Open the gates. Not while injured dragons carry saddles your office has not inspected from the inside. That is refusal of a royal command. No, it is prevention of another yard death." The words reached the place neither of them had named. Garrick. His dishonor. The king who had accepted the report, Varkos tore the remaining lining away. He was not exposing a crime for the court. He was trying to get the biting thing away from the old wound beneath his wing. A final strip of leather fell open between his claws. Beneath it, hidden under the rear command plate, was an old maker's mark cut into the support frame. Lorna knew the shape before the rain washed the dirt from it. 2 crossed harness needles beneath a broken ring. Garrick's emergency release mark. It had been carved from inside the saddle. He had not lost control of Varkos 8 years ago. He had found the needles first. The mark did not say who ordered them. It only proved his final act had been release, not failure. The emergency release mark had not cleared Garrick Beck. It had only proved his hand had been inside the saddle when everyone said he lost control. Rain continued to strike High Rain's yard. The ruined command saddle lay between Varkos's foreclaws, its 2 rows of black needles exposed beneath the torn lining. Quartermaster Elise Parr examined Garrick's mark without touching it. "Unauthorized tampering," she said. "A maker facing disciplinary action could carve an emergency symbol to disguise negligence." Lorna kept her eyes on Varkos's uneven wing. "A release mark is cut from inside the frame after the load straps are severed. That proves only that he damaged royal equipment. It proves he opened the saddle while it was still fitted to a living dragon, possibly during panic. Maker release law permits the cut only when the harness endangers breath, wing movement, or blood flow." Elise looked toward Severin. Garrick Beck was not acting as a licensed yard inspector that night. He was the maker assigned to Varkos. A maker does not stop knowing anatomy because an officer dislikes the conclusion. Severin stood over the torn frame, rain running from his dark hair onto his armor. The launch doors remained closed. Riders protested from the upper platforms. "The Western Patrol is due before dusk," Elise said. "Then it will wait. Grounding the wing on one damaged saddle weakens the border. Launching injured dragons in uninspected equipment weakens it faster." The order did not restore Lorna's authority or return her confiscated designs. It only kept every flight gate closed beneath the king's command. "You will serve as technical witness during the inspection," Severin said. "Not yardmaster. No, not owner of the seized patterns. Not until the inquiry is complete." He was using her knowledge because the evidence required it. He had not admitted the seizure was wrong. "Then record that I examine under protest." A clerk wrote it. Varkos shifted when handlers approached with ropes. His jaws opened, not to expose another secret, to warn them away from the place that hurt. "Remove the restraint poles," Lorna said. "Bring a chest brace, 2 wool pads, and a low inspection lamp." "He may strike," Elise said. "The poles will make it more likely." Severin ordered the equipment brought. Lorna approached from Varkos's left, where his good eye could follow her. She stopped before the damaged wing. "Hold the shoulder," she told Severin. The yard went quiet. Severin removed his sword belt and lowered himself beside Varkos's foreleg. He had knelt because the dragon needed steadiness, not because he had returned dignity to the woman who knew how to give it. "Where?" "Beneath the breast ridge. If he pulls away, move with him." Severin placed both hands where she indicated. Varkos's muscles tightened beneath black scales. "Do not command him. I was not going to. You have spent years being obeyed. Your body may try before your mouth does." His eyes lifted to hers. Then he lowered his weight and waited. Lorna slid the pads beneath the scarred wing root. Varkos breathed hard enough to move her braid, but he did not strike. She raised the lamp. 2 fresh puncture rows marked the swollen tissue. They matched the current needles exactly. The clerk measured them with a silver spacing comb. 6 points along the forward nerve bed, 5 beneath the rear command plate. Pressure marks can occur beneath any rigid military frame. Elise said. Not impaired puncture rose. Lorna lifted one needle with forceps. Dark residue clung near its tip. Medicinal leather dressing, Elise said. It prevents rot. Dressing belongs on leather, not metal. Contact transfers residue. Lorna held the needle above the lamp. The coating softened but did not drip. Bring ash salt. A stable healer mixed white ash salt with water. Lorna touched it to the residue. The black surface turned blue at the edge. The healer went still. Numbing pitch. Approved for irritation beneath hard tack, Elise said. On a needle, it dulls the wound after the point enters. The dragon feels the first pain strongly enough to obey. Then the pitch hides the damage. Severin looked at the punctures. Needles do not make courage, Lorna said. They make pain look like obedience. Varkos pulled once against Severin's hands. Severin moved with him. The dragon settled. That obedience belonged to pressure released, not royal blood. Open the accident record, Severin said. The yard clerk brought the sealed flight archive. Garrick's death occupied less than half a page. Royal mount released during launch preparation. Maker Lorna Beck cut primary load straps without command authorization. Dragon movement caused platform collapse. Maker killed beneath falling frame. Finding negligent interference and loss of control. Lorna read without blinking. Where's the equipment record? The clerk turned the page. Recovered saddle transferred to quartermaster storage. Storage number. The column was blank. Accident equipment was often stripped for salvage during the Eastern Campaign, Elise said. Then there should be a salvage entry. The clerk searched the campaign inventory. No saddle frame appeared. No destroyed command plate. No needle count. Only a notation beside Garrick's name. Maker privileges revoked posthumously. Find the original frame, Severin ordered. The quartermaster staff searched 3 storage vaults and returned without it. Missing equipment does not alter the recorded cause of death, Elise said. No, but it prevents the report from proving what it claimed. Lorna turned back to Varkos. The fresh punctures crossed scar tissue older than the current command model. Rain had softened the pale ridges enough for the lamp to show their shape. She parted the scales carefully. Beneath the new wounds were 11 healed punctures. For 8 years, the court had called those marks panic. Lorna had buried a husband under a word that never touched the wing. 6 forward, 5 behind. The same spacing, the same angle. The old report had named failure. Varkos's wing named injury. The pain command pattern had been driven into him 8 years earlier, on the night Lorna Beck cut him free. The scars did not say who ordered the pattern. They only proved Garrick had cut against injury, not command. The scars had not named Elise. They had named the pattern. Old punctures prove old equipment, Quartermaster Elise Parr said. Not unlawful equipment. Command patterns were harsher during the Eastern campaigns. Lorna kept one hand beneath Varkos's swollen wing. Old cruelty is not made lawful because it survived long enough to become standard. Standards are judged by the conditions they were written for. Then show the standard. The Eastern War required dragons to carry through fear, injury, and hostile assent. Pressure reinforcement was approved when hesitation cost formations. Pressure reinforcement does not require hidden needles. Later refinements may have changed the mechanism. Then the change should have a maker's count, a trial record, and a wound limit. Severin rose from beside Varkos and replaced his sword belt. The command model is suspended from launch. For the royal mount? Elise asked. For every dragon fitted with this frame, the Western Patrol will fail. Then send ground scouts. We do not hold the Western Ridge with boots. We will not hold it with injured wings disguised as discipline. The yard clerk recorded the suspension. The order protected the next launch. It did not unmake the years his throne had called pain discipline. Severin had grounded the wing. He had not yet grounded the design. Lorna lowered Varkos's wing onto the wool pads. The fresh punctures no longer carried saddle pressure. Bring the quartermaster transfer ledgers, she said. You are a technical witness, not commander of the archive, Elise replied. Then let the king ask why a fatal accident saddle vanished. Severin did. The ledgers arrived in 3 iron-bound volumes. The inquiry moved beneath the covered tack arcade, where Varkos remained in sight. The clerk found the entry from 8 years earlier. Recovered flight equipment. 1 royal saddle frame, 1 fractured command plate, primary straps severed, transferred to campaign salvage. The destination column carried no storage number. "Where's the needle count?" Lorna asked. "Not every early frame used numbered pressure points," Elise said. "This one left 11 punctures. You are applying current rules to wartime salvage. I am applying a dead maker's cut to the frame he opened." The clerk searched the salvage record. Leather removed. Buckles reclaimed. Bone supports retained for military development. No mention of needles. No disposal signature. No final condition report. "A missing saddle cannot prove innocence," Lorna said, "but it can no longer prove guilt. Campaign salvage was not an evidence vault. Usable materials were redirected quickly. Why salvage a saddle blamed for killing its maker? The saddle did not kill Garrick Beck. The platform collapse did, after he severed the load straps, without authorization, because something inside the frame was hurting Varkos. That remains your interpretation." Severin looked at the line about military development. What was developed from the retained supports? The clerk turned to a prototype index. The reference number led to a separate room register. "Prototype equipment contains active defense designs," Elise said. "Opening that room before civilian witnesses compromises procurement security." "Then clear the riders," Severin said. "Keep Lorna, the healer, the clerk, and 2 master harnessers." Lorna watched Severin order the prototype room opened with the same authority he had used to seize her house. Action did not erase direction. A command could uncover harm after another command had protected it. The prototype room stood beneath the northern launch tower behind a bronze door stamped with the quartermaster seal. Elise supplied the key without hesitation. Inside, wooden saddle forms filled high shelves. Each carried a campaign date, load class, and approved pressure map. The first 2 models used broad breast straps and rigid shoulder plates. The third introduced paired internal points, 6 forward, 5 behind. A brass label named it Command Model Revision 1, approved 6 months after Garrick's death. Severin examined the frame. These measurements matched the current saddle? The clerk brought the spacing comb. The needle rows matched exactly. Lorna measured the rear support curve and the angle beneath the wing bridge. Not merely the needles. She touched a shallow cut near the inner brace. Garrick's emergency release mark had been sanded down, but half of the broken ring remained beneath the lacquer. For 8 years, they had not only blamed his hand, they had tried to smooth it out of the wood. Salvaged material often retains prior maker cuts, Elise said. Then this is the accident frame, or a support taken from it. The breast curve was shaped for Varkos at 7 years old. Garrick widened the left side after his first wing fracture. No other royal dragon carried this imbalance. Severin ran his thumb over the uneven curve. "You are certain?" "I carved the matching body form. It was among the designs his officers had confiscated that morning." "Why was an accident frame used as a prototype?" "Because it survived a catastrophic release," Elise said. "Military development studies equipment that endures failure. Basis is a clean word when the blood is sanded off first. The frame remains structurally useful." Garrick died. Varkos carried 11 wounds. The prototype office would have evaluated every component. Where is that evaluation? The clerk searched the register. Prototype authorization existed. Structural retention approved. Command response improved under load. No dragon injury column appeared. "Improved response," Lorna said. "Operational language. It means the dragon moved when pain entered the wing. It means the frame reduced hesitation. The injury column was not empty because no dragon bled. It was empty because no one had been required to write it." Varkos gave a low sound from the arcade. Not testimony. Discomfort as rain pressed against old scar tissue. Severin ordered the prototype frame removed under guard. Elise did not resist. The design may still have been lawful under wartime authority. Nothing here establishes who approved the internal points or whether Garrick understood them before launch. "No," Lorna said. "It establishes what happened after he died." The clerk lifted the prototype authorization sheet. At the bottom, beneath the quartermaster development seal, was a source notation. "Recovered Beck accident frame. Adopted as basis for Command Model Revision 1. The notation did not name who approved the internal points. It only proved the Yard had treated a fatal release as useful research. Garrick's release had not ended the pain pattern. The Yard had taken the saddle he cut open, erased the wound from its record, and built the next generation of royal harnesses from it. The prototype had not named a murderer. It had named the design the yard chose to keep. Quartermaster Elise Parr stood beside the recovered frame while rain beat against the bronze shutters. Basis does not mean copy, she said. Prototype offices study failure to prevent it. Lorna looked at the sanded remains of Garrick's release mark. They studied the frame after removing the part that explained why he cut it open. They retained usable structure and copied the 11-point pressure map. The current model contains later refinements. Then show the trials. Elise glanced toward Severin. Prototype records contain wartime performance methods. So did the saddle on Varkos's back, Severin said. Open them. The clerk unlocked a narrow iron cabinet. 3 leather files bore the label Command Model Revision 1. The first recorded load capacity. The second recorded rider stability. The third carried a black seal marked Performance Response. No healer's file stood beside them. The clerk opened the third volume. Trial 1. Royal War Dragon held through simulated ascent. Command response improved under load. Translate it, Severin said. It means the dragon completed the movement after pressure was applied. Lorna looked at him. It means he moved when pain entered the wing. Elise answered evenly. It means the frame produced reliable response during combat stress. Which dragon? The record used no name. Only Royal Test Mount 1. Trial 2 increased the load. Trial 3 shortened response time. Each entry praised compliance. None recorded the body beneath the saddle. Where is the injury column? Lorna asked. Early prototype records did not require one, Elise said. The injury column was not empty because no dragon bled. It was empty because no one had been required to write it. Wartime trials prioritized operational survival. Whose survival? Elise did not answer directly. Dragons returned, fit for deployment. Fit by whose measure? The attending healers. Lorna looked at the bare shelf. Then bring the healer log. The index showed medical observations filed separately under stable treatment. Why? She asked. Prototype security. Separation keeps the wound from sitting beside the design that made it. Severin ordered the treatment books brought. Outside, Varkos shifted away from his swollen wing. Not accusation. Only a body protecting the place that hurt. Lorna checked the wool pads beneath him. Severin followed, but stopped before kneeling again. The gates remain closed, he said. I can hear the bells. You thought I might reopen them. I think kings prefer temporary caution when permanent responsibility has not yet been named. He did not defend himself. The stable healer arrived with 2 ledgers. The clerk found the prototype dates. Royal Test Mount 1 returned with wing root bleeding after applied command pressure. Treatment: black pitch dressing, compress, reduced movement overnight. Classification: resistance fatigue. Lorna read the words twice. Resistance fatigue. A dragon struggling against a new frame can bruise itself, Elise said. 11 punctures are not bruising. The early points may have been adjusted after testing. Then where is the adjustment order? The prototype file contained none. The next healer entry recorded renewed bleeding after the second trial. The third listed numbness along the rear wing ridge. Each time, the classification remained resistance fatigue. Each time, the performance record described improved command response. Severin placed the 2 books side by side. One praised obedience. The other treated the wound that produced it. Who approved this procedure? The Military Equipment Council, Elise said. Names. The clerk brought the approval chain. The earliest sheet carried 3 offices: Prototype Master, Quartermaster Review, and Crown Acceptance. The Prototype Master was dead. The Quartermaster Review bore Elise's predecessor's seal. The Crown field was blank. This predates Severin's reign, Lorna said. The first revision does, Elise replied. The current model was accepted later. The clerk turned to Command Model Revision 4. Same 11 pressure points. Narrower tips. Numbing pitch authorized as anti-irritation dressing. A wing root relief strip removed to increase rider stability. Lorna touched the diagram. This is not safer. It is more controlled. It drives the same pain through a smaller area, which reduces movement around the wound, by making movement cost more. Severin's early reign seal stood beneath the approval line, a crowned dragon over crossed reins. He had accepted the revision during the 2nd year of his rule. The seal approved procurement continuity, Elise said. It did not certify every internal component. Severin read the line. Royal acceptance granted for standardized command response across all active war wings. No injury limit. No independent harness inspection. No requirement that healer reports travel with performance records. Lorna watched him understand the difference between inheriting a design and making it official. He had not invented the needles. He had given them the reach of the crown. Who presented this to me? The Military Equipment Council presented it as a stability improvement after 3 formation losses. Were healer logs attached? Not under the filing rules then in force. Did anyone tell me dragons bled during testing? I cannot speak to every briefing you received. The answer protected her. It did not clear him. Severin ordered every command saddle removed before sunset. He ordered the torn royal saddle, recovered prototype, Varkos's measurements, ash salt test, and healer logs preserved under separate witness seals. Then he turned to Garrick's accident finding. Suspend the negligence judgment pending full review. Not erase, not restore. A suspension where dishonor had stood for 8 years. Lorna felt no gratitude. You suspended a word, she said. He is still buried beneath it. I know. No. You have begun to know. The clerk lifted the revision 4 approval sheet. A secondary notation appeared beneath Severin's seal. Prototype emergency release incorporated into failure testing. Beside it was a copied version of Garrick's broken ring mark. Not the original cut. A trace diagram. The designers had not mistaken his release for panic. They had studied it closely enough to reproduce the exact way he opened the saddle from inside. And the current command model had been accepted under Severin's own seal after the Yard already knew what Garrick's mark meant. The copied release mark did not prove the Yard had honored Garrick's warning. It proved the designers had understood it well enough to build against it. Lorna held the revision 4 approval sheet beneath the prototype lamp. Why was his emergency cut incorporated into failure testing? Elise Parr answered without hesitation. Because battlefield harnesses must resist unauthorized release. By makers? By saboteurs, panicked riders, wounded handlers, anyone who might open a saddle while a dragon is still carrying formation weight. Garrick was not a saboteur. The test notation does not name him. It copies his mark. It copies a failure path. Lorna looked at the recovered frame. Basis. Failure path. Command response. You have clean words for every place the dragon bled. Severin's seal remained at the bottom of the page. What did the test require, he asked. The clerk opened the attached schedule. Emergency release resistance measured under full load. Translate it, Lorna said. The clerk hesitated. Elise answered instead. The frame was tested to ensure that one cut could not detach the saddle during ascent. One cut is the point of an emergency release. One cut can also drop a rider from the sky. A release law exists because sometimes keeping the saddle attached kills both. The next page described revision 2. Rear support reinforced. Maker access narrowed. Internal release seam shielded beneath command plate. Revision 3 removed the exposed cutting groove entirely. Revision 4 added a locking rib over the inner straps. Lorna touched the diagram. They did not make the saddle safer. They made it harder to remove, Severin said. Elise faced him. They made it harder to lose during combat. After the first model trapped 11 points against a wing. After the first model was cut apart during a fatal launch. The words settled between them. Lorna's fingers tightened on the page. A fatal launch caused by the frame. Still unproven. Then opened the anti-release trials. The prototype clerk brought a second box from the lower shelf. Inside were narrow test cards tied with black cord. Trial 1. Release delayed 3 breaths. Trial 2. Release delayed 7 breaths. Trial 3. Maker access prevented under rider load. Final judgment. Retention improved. No injury column. Gnaw dragon name. No record of what 7 breaths cost a body beneath the frame. The Yard measured success by how long the saddle resisted the person trying to save the dragon, Lorna said. By how long it resisted uncontrolled removal, Elise replied. Control is not the same as safety. In war it often has to be. Varkos struck one claw against the arcade stones. Rain had eased, but the swelling beneath his left wing continued to rise. The wool pads were dark with diluted blood. Lorna left the records. Bring the healer. Severin followed. Varkos lowered his head when Lorna approached, then shifted away from the current frame lying under guard. Not memory of words, recognition of shape, scent, and the pressure that had hurt him. The healer examined the fresh punctures. The numbing pitch has slowed the pain response, but the tissue is heating beneath the scar. Flush it, Lorna said. Warm salt water first, cold after the pitch lifts. The healer looked toward Severin for approval. Do what she says, he ordered. Lorna's mouth hardened. She should not need your permission to treat a wound your equipment made. The words struck him cleanly. He did not answer. A handler ran from the eastern stalls. Another dragon is down. The grounded war wing had been waiting under fitted saddles while the inquiry continued. In stall 9, an aging red dragon named Marrow had folded against the wall. One rear leg trembled beneath him. Lorna ordered the saddle removed. The handlers reached for the standard release. It would not open. The locking rib held the inner straps beneath the command plate. Cut the breast line, she said. The blade groove was removed in revision 3, one handler replied. I know. She seized a leather knife and drove it beneath the outer strap. The reinforced hide resisted. Severin took the second side. Where? Below the metal stitching. Do not pull until I say. They cut together. Marrow's breath broke into short, violent bursts. When the saddle finally came free, 3 hidden pressure points had pierced the old scar above his hindquarter. Fewer needles than Varkos. Same black pitch. Different command zone. The pattern had been adapted to the injury each dragon was most likely to protect. Ilusa entered the stall. Individual fitting places reinforcement where movement is least stable. Where pain is most effective, Lorna said. You are assuming intent from placement. I am reading anatomy. Severin looked at the removed saddle. How many active dragons carry anti-release frames? The quartermaster clerk checked the yard inventory. 43. And how many were fitted after recorded injuries? 31. The number changed the air. Severin ordered every saddle removed before nightfall, every dragon examined by healers and independent harnessers, and every anti-release plate sealed as evidence. Elise remained composed. Removing the entire wing from service leaves the capital without aerial defense. Then the capital will learn what dependence costs. Ground enemies will not wait for ethical inspection. Neither did these wounds. Lorna looked at him. The order protected more than the next launch. It also exposed the kingdom to the consequence his procurement system had hidden. Still, he had not returned her house. He had not restored Garrick's name. He had not surrendered command over the inquiry. A clerk carried the anti-release trial box into the stall. One card had been stuck to the bottom by old pitch. The writing belonged to a prototype master. Beck release delayed by reinforced command rib. Test subject retained under load for 7 breaths despite maker intervention. Below it was a timing notation from 8 years earlier. The same night Garrick died. Lorna read it twice. Test subject? The clerk searched the corresponding yard number. Royal War Dragon Farkos. The yard had not studied Garrick's release after the accident. It had been testing the anti-release design on Varkos before the platform fell. Garrick had not stumbled into a hidden prototype. He had cut open a live trial already designed to stop him. The timing card did not prove who expected Garrick Beck to intervene. It proved Varkos had been under anti-release load before the platform fell. Quartermaster Illis Parr read the trial notation without changing expression. Live equipment testing was lawful during the Eastern emergency. On a dragon already carrying an old wing fracture? Lorna asked. Varkos had been cleared for duty by a healer who never saw the pressure points. That has not been established. The trial record says the frame held him for 7 breaths despite maker intervention. It says the retention system functioned. It says someone tried to release him and the saddle was designed to stop them. Severin stood beside the open test box while healers removed the final anti-release saddle from Marrow. Bring the full trial protocol. The prototype clerk searched the lower cabinet. A rolled sheet had been filed beneath platform engineering rather than dragon equipment. Its wax seal was cracked, but the writing remained legible. Command Model Live Load Procedure. The clerk read aloud. Dragon secured under simulated launch tension. Rider weight applied. Command pressure increased until forward movement begins. What ends the test? Lorna asked. The clerk followed the columns. Completion of launch response. Equipment failure, or medical abort. And the medical limits? Visible wing, root bleeding, loss of hind balance, interrupted breath beyond 3 counts. Varkos had suffered all 3. The healer log recorded bleeding after applied pressure. The trial card described 7 breaths of retained load. Garrick's emergency cut had been made from inside the frame. Who could order an abort? Severin asked. Attending healer may request it, the clerk said. Trial authority must release the command tension. Why can the healer not release it directly? Military trials separate treatment from command. Lorna looked toward Elise. So the person trained to recognize injury could ask. The person measuring obedience could refuse. Command authority exists because healers do not carry battlefield responsibility, Elise said. A wing does not bleed differently in battle. The trial was intended to reproduce combat conditions. Then it reproduced the part where officers call pain necessary until someone else cuts the straps. The clerk opened the attached signal record. At the fourth breath, the stable healer had raised a copper abort flag. At the fifth, Varkos lost balance in his rear legs. At the sixth, blood appeared beneath the left wing root. At the seventh, Garrick entered the frame. Beside the final line stood a note. Maker intervention unauthorized. Command retention maintained. Lorna's hand closed around the edge of the table. He waded through the healer's flag, or he was ordered to remain clear, Elise said. He entered after the yard refused to release Varkos. He entered an active test without command permission. A release mark is not carved for shame. It is carved when a maker chooses the dragon over the rider. Severin looked at the platform plan. What caused the collapse? The yard engineer spread the original load drawing beside the trial procedure. High Rains Platform 3 had been designed to carry a dragon standing forward into launch. It had not been rated for opposing forces. Varkos pulling away from the pain while the anti-release frame held him toward the rider position. The locking rib transferred that force into the rear anchor posts. Garrick cut the primary straps. The stored tensionally sideways. 2 anchor posts tore free. The upper platform fell. He caused the final movement, Elise said. Lorna did not deny it. He cut Varkos loose, and the platform collapsed, because the anti-release frame had loaded the structure beyond its side rating. The frame had not failed before he intervened. The dragon had. Silence settled over the prototype room. The accident report had not invented every fact. Garrick had entered without command permission. He had cut the straps. His act had released the force that brought the platform down. But the report had removed everything that made the act necessary. It called release negligence. It did not name the bleeding wing, the ignored abort flag, or the saddle built to resist rescue. Severin placed the protocol beside Garrick's death finding. Suspend the negligence judgment and the unauthorized interference charge. They are part of the same finding, Elise said. Then suspend the entire finding. Lorna looked at him. A suspension is not restoration. No. Garrick remains publicly responsible until the inquiry ends. Yes. He did not soften the answer. He also did not hide behind procedure. Then record that the Crown has preserved his dishonor while reopening the evidence that created it, Lorna said. The clerk wrote every word. Severin ordered the platform anchors, trial cards, healer flag record, and accident report sealed together. No office could present the collapse without the ignored medical abort again. The order changed how the evidence could be used. It did not return 8 years to Lorna. Elise examined the trial authority column. The duty seal belongs to the quartermaster office. It was not assigned permanently to one hand. Who held it that night? Severin asked. The duty roster will show which officers were present. The roster was brought from a separate campaign volume. 3 names appeared beneath prototype operations. The prototype master, who had controlled the load winch, the stable healer, who had raised the abort flag, and an assistant quartermaster responsible for continuation authority. The name had been written in narrow black ink. Elise par. No one spoke. Elise read the entry. I was responsible for supply continuity. Not every signal made on the platform. Could anyone else refuse the healer's abort? Lorna asked. The prototype master could continue mechanical testing. Under whose authority? The quartermaster duty seal, which you held. An office seal proves administrative responsibility. It does not prove I saw the flag. Severin turned to the signal board record. The copper abort flag had been acknowledged. A receiving cut appeared beside the 4th breath entry. The mark matched the quartermaster duty seal. The record still did not prove whose hand pressed it, but it proved the office controlling the test had received the warning before Garrick entered the frame. Lorna looked through the open doorway toward Varkos. The old dragon lowered his injured wing onto the wool supports. He remembered no roster, no seal, and no accusation. His body remembered only the pressure that had continued after the yard knew he was bleeding. The healer had asked for release. The quartermaster office had acknowledged the request, and the live trial had continued until Garrick Beck chose the dragon over the command. The receiving cut proved the abort had reached the quartermaster station. It did not prove whose hand decided 7 breaths were acceptable. Elise Parr stood beside the signal record while the yard clerk compared the cut with the duty seal. Receiving marks acknowledge delivery, she said. They do not authorize continuation. Lorna remained near Varkos's wool-supported wing. Then where is the continuation order? Live trials do not stop every time a signal enters the station. The duty officer confirms whether the medical limit has actually been crossed. The healer recorded bleeding. After the trial, the copper flag rose at the 4th breath. Before the injury could be measured, Varkos lost balance at the 5th. Large dragons shift under tension. Blood appeared at the 6th, and Garrick entered at the 7th, before the platform master completed the assessment. Lorna looked at the acknowledged abort mark. Elise had an orderly word for every breath Garrick had been forced to spend deciding whether authority would act. Severin turned to the prototype clerk. What record governs continuation after an abort signal? A pressure trial must have a signal board and command docket. The board records what was seen. The docket records what was ordered. Bring it. The clerk searched the platform archive. The command docket was not filed with Varkos's healer log or Garrick's accident report. It had been placed in the production records beneath a heading marked equipment yield. Lorna watched the clerk open it. Trial subject remained under load after medical flag. Reason: command response not yet confirmed. Continuation authorized until forward compliance or mechanical failure. Forward compliance, Severin said. The dragon had not completed the required movement. Elise replied. He was bleeding, Lorna said. The trial authority had to determine whether the response failure came from injury, resistance, or unstable footing. By increasing the same pressure that caused all 3. By holding the test long enough to distinguish them. Varkos shifted in the arcade. His breathing roughened when the prototype frame was carried past him under guard. The handlers moved it farther away. No hidden intelligence guided his reaction. Only remembered shape, pitch, and pain. Severin read the continuation line again. Who could authorize this? The prototype master, the clerk said. Or the assistant quartermaster holding continuation authority. The prototype master controlled the winch, Lorna said. Who controlled the order? The clerk turned to the duty assignment. Assistant Quartermaster Elise Parr. Elise did not look away. I held administrative authority over the trial schedule. The platform master controlled immediate load decisions. Could he continue after a medical abort without your duty seal? Severin asked. Not formally. Was the seal used? The command docket carried a square press beside the continuation line. Same office. Same night. Same acknowledged warning. Elise placed one finger beside it. Duty seals were kept at the quartermaster station. A ranking clerk could press them under standing procedure. Which clerk? Lorna asked. The roster should identify the station staff. The night roster named 2 clerks. One had died during the Eastern Campaign. The other had been dismissed for falsifying grain weights 5 years later. Neither name appeared on the continuation docket. A seal without a hand, Lorna said. An office action, Elise corrected. An office does not watch a dragon bleed, nor does one missing name establish that I watched it. The distinction remained. Elise had held the authority. The office had received the abort. The trial had continued. But the record still did not place her eyes on the platform or her hand on the seal. Severin ordered the station key register opened. 3 iron key tags had allowed access to the duty seal that night. 1 belonged to Elise, 1 to the prototype master, 1 to the senior clerk. All 3 were signed out before the trial. Only 2 were returned afterward. The prototype master's tag was missing. Elise looked at the register. He died 2 years later. The missing key may have remained in his effects, or been lost during the platform collapse, she added. Lorna studied the return times. Elise's key had been returned 1 bell after Garrick's death. The senior clerks came back before the accident. Your key remained active through the continuation, Lorna said. So did the prototype master's. His hands were on the winch. He had assistance. And you had authority. Authority is not proof of personal instruction. No, Lorna said. It is proof that the instruction belonged to the office you controlled. Severin ordered the command docket, key register, and signal board sealed together. Then he addressed the full yard. From this hour, a medical abort ends any harness trial immediately. No quartermaster, rider, or crown officer may hold a dragon under load after a healer raises the signal. Elise's expression tightened. You are transferring battlefield authority to stable healers. I am removing the power to redefine bleeding as resistance. The healers receive direct release keys to every test frame. Independent harnessers were added to all future trials. Lorna listened without gratitude. The new order would protect the next dragon. It did not answer who had denied the old one release. Severin had changed the procedure. He had not yet returned her house, her designs, or Garrick's name. The production clerk found another reference attached to the continuation docket. Equipment yield, he said. The sheet recorded whether the trial produced a model suitable for duplication. Trial result: successful retention through maker intervention. Prototype value confirmed. 12 additional command frames ordered. Lorna looked at the date. The order had been entered the morning after Garrick died, before his body had been released to her, before the accident inquiry had taken testimony, before anyone had measured Varkus's wounds. The procurement sheet carried the quartermaster duty authorization. Éluse pas. She read her name without flinching. Continuation orders after a successful structural trial were standard. The accident investigation remained separate. Separate, Lorna said. So the yard could call the frame successful while calling the man who cut it open negligent. The frame retained load. It retained pain. The sheet did not prove Elisa had intended Garrick's death. It proved that by the morning after it, she had treated the saddle that trapped Varkos as a design worth reproducing. The procurement order turned Garrick's death from an accident record into a production decision. By first bell, 12 additional frames had been assigned to 3 war wings. Quartermaster Elise Parr stood beside the delivery ledger, while High Rain's yard remained locked beneath rain-dark clouds. Wartime production does not wait for every casualty inquiry, she said. The frame retained rider load during catastrophic interference. Catastrophic interference, Lorna said. You mean the maker cutting a bleeding dragon free. I mean the structure remained attached under conditions likely in battle. And Garrick's death became proof of durability. The death and the design were reviewed separately. That separation is the wound. Severin looked at the delivery entries. What happened to the dragons fitted with them? The clerk brought deployment books, repair tallies, and stable returns. None contained a column for command needle injury. One dragon developed wing stiffness after ascent. Another refused left turns. A third began striking during fitting. Each condition was classified under behavior. Resistance, age-related decline, battlefield agitation. Where are the healer records? Lorna asked. Filed by infirmary, Elise said. And the harness reports? Procurement. So the office measuring obedience never had to read the office treating the wounds. Specialized records prevent confusion. They prevent consequence from sitting beside cause. Severin ordered the files joined by dragon and date. The first matched pair belonged to a bronze female called Sereth. Procurement record: improved response under rear command pressure. Healer record: bleeding above, left hindquarter, numbness after flight, swelling beneath scar. The next 2 showed the same split. By the 7th, the injuries were no longer random. They appeared where each dragon had prior damage. Bring the fitting charts, Lorna said. Elise did not object. That unsettled her. The charts showed old fractures, scar bands, wing limitations, and rider balance points. Lorna recognized the measurements beneath them. Her measurements: this breast ridge notation is mine. The source line read, Beck Anatomical Variance Table. Severin looked toward the harness house where soldiers had stacked her confiscated forms. You supplied these? I supplied humane fitting records so rigid frames would not press into old wounds. The Crown purchased yard measurements years ago, Elise said. The design office adapted them for military standardization. Lorna placed her hand over the red command points. Every place she had marked for relief had been turned into force. Where she widened leather, the office narrowed it. Where she floated a bridge above scar tissue, the command model drove a point beneath it. You used my maps backward. We used anatomical data to improve response precision. You found the places they could not ignore. Targeted pressure reduces the need for broad restraint, because one hidden point can hurt more efficiently than a rigid plate. That is your interpretation. It is the geometry. Severin lifted Sereth's chart. Who approved Beck tables for command placement? The source chain carried 3 stages. Design conversion. Quartermaster procurement. Royal Continuity Authorization. The first bore Elise's office seal. The last carried Severin's seal from the year he expanded the war wing. Standardized anatomical fitting, authorized for combat compliance. I believe this meant individualized safety, he said. You believed the word fitting without asking what the saddle was fitted to do. He did not defend himself. The order had not designed the needles. It had made Lorna's knowledge available to every yard seeking obedience from a wounded body. How many frames used Beck variance tables? Severin asked. 118. Across 6 royal yards. Lorna closed her eyes once. Her work had traveled farther than she ever had. Not as care, as precision pain. Outside, Varkos shifted on the wool supports. He knew nothing of ledgers or seals. His body had been measured, copied, and punished in places it had learned to protect. Severin ordered every yard messenger tower opened. No command model Dragon launches until independent inspection clears body and frame. You will ground 6 wings during an active border threat, Elise said. I will ground equipment built from injury maps. The realm may lose air control. Then the realm will know what its control was costing. He ordered Lorna's body forms removed from royal seizure and sealed under her ownership pending review. Not returned to full command. Not restored to the yard. But no quartermaster office could copy them without her written permission. You confiscated them this morning, Lorna said. Yes. And now protect them because they became evidence. Yes. The honesty was narrower than remorse. It was still more useful than excuse. The joined files revealed a repeating sequence. Whenever a healer recorded bleeding, procurement entered improved compliance within the same week. Whenever a dragon refused a turn protecting an old injury, the command points moved closer to that injury. The yard treated pain response as design feedback, Lorna said. Elise read the same pages. Adaptation to movement does not prove intent to injure. No. It proves the designers watched where pain changed behavior and called the change improvement. The clerk found an annex beneath the Revision 4 expansion order. Field adjustment guidance. Use existing scar maps to identify highest response correction zones. Do not place points where damage risks immediate loss of flight. Lorna read the second line again. Not where injury would not occur. Where injury would not end the mission immediately. Who wrote this? Severin asked. The author field carried only Quartermaster Technical Office. Office guidance is compiled from multiple specialists, Illy said. Who approved distribution? The final page bore a narrow authorization mark. Elise Parr, Chief Quartermaster. I approved a fitting manual, she said. I did not inspect every phrase entered by technical staff. The phrase taught 6 yards how to turn scar tissue into a command point. It also prohibited placement likely to cause catastrophic failure. You drew the moral line at whether the dragon could still finish the flight. In war, finishing the flight may be the line between a city and fire. Lorna looked toward Varkos. So the pain stopped just short of losing the weapon. The annex did not prove Elise invented the first needles. It proved that under her authority, the old pattern became policy. At the bottom of the distribution record was a performance summary. Dragon refusal reduced by 40% after scar-targeted fitting. Below it, omitted from the public report, stood another result. Permanent wing retirement increased by nearly the same amount. The public report had praised fewer refusals. The sealed retirement ledger counted the wings that never flew again. Lorna laid the 2 records side by side. 40% fewer refusals, she said, and 38% more permanent retirements. Elise Parr remained at the end of the inspection table. War wings age unevenly. Campaign loss cannot be reduced to 1 equipment revision. Then separate the dates. The clerk did. 6 royal yards had adopted scar-targeted command fitting. Within 2 winters, 47 dragons had been removed from active flight. 29 carried documented injuries before receiving the revised frame. The retirement reasons used familiar words. Unstable turning. Age resistance. Loss of command confidence. None named puncture wounds. Lorna opened the joined healer files. 11 had wing root bleeding. 9 lost sensation along an old scar. 6 stopped bearing weight after rear command pressure. Correlation is not design intent, Elise said. No. It is what design intent leaves behind when no one writes it honestly. Severin read the final totals. The refusal rate fell because the dragons most likely to refuse were retired, or because the remaining wing became more reliable, Elise replied. You removed the bodies that exposed the method and called the survivors obedient. A horn sounded from the western tower, 3 low notes. Then 2 sharp ones. Every rider in Highrain's yard turned toward the ridge. A messenger descended the stair at a run. Fire beacons beyond Grey Pass. 2 hostile flights moving east. Elise closed the ledger. The capital wing must launch. No command saddle leaves the ground, Severin said. Then the western villages meet Dragonfire without air defense. The words changed the yard. Riders who had accepted inspection began looking toward the closed gates. Fear made old methods seem cleaner than they were. Lorna crossed to the active roster. How many dragons have never carried revision 3 or 4? The clerk searched. 7. How many are cleared by healers today? Fool. Bring their body forms. Elise faced her. You cannot rebuild a combat wing before the beacons reach the river. I do not need the whole wing. I need 4 dragons whose saddles do not punish the movement required to survive. Soft harnesses shift under battle turns. Humane does not mean loose. Lorna looked at Severin. Break the seizure seal on my house. He did not call for a clerk to do it. He crossed the yard, drew the royal seizure pin from the harness house door, and broke his own wax seal before every rider present. The act returned access. It did not yet return ownership or command. Lorna entered the workshop Garrick had built with her. Wooden body forms stood where soldiers had abandoned them. Rolls of layered hide, floating bridges, and wide load straps remained beneath inventory cloths. She selected 4 fittings. No needles, no locking ribs. Every release seam exposed. Elise followed her inside. Your designs were never approved for formation combat. They were approved every time a scarred dragon returned without bleeding. That is not a military standard. It should have been. Severin ordered riders, healers, and independent harnessers to work under Lorna's direction. He carried frames when she told him to carry them, and stepped back when his presence tightened a dragon's breathing. No apology entered the room. Only labor. Outside, the western horn sounded again. The first 3 dragons accepted their relief harnesses. The 4th, an older gray male, flinched when a breast strap crossed a healed burn. Lorna removed it. We launch 3. We need 4, Elise said. He needs rest. He is capable of flight. He is capable of pain. That is not the same measure. Severin looked toward the beacon smoke. 3 launch. The riders mounted. Before Lorna opened the gates, she checked every release seam herself. Then she placed a direct medical key into each healer's hand. If a healer signals, the rider lands, no override. Severin repeated the order to the full yard. The 3 dragons rose through the rain without command points beneath their scars. They did not hesitate. They adjusted because the harnesses moved with them. The yard watched until they cleared the western tower. Elisa said nothing. A messenger from the archive arrived carrying a narrow packet. The retirement review uncovered this in the suspended healer files. The packet belonged to the stable healer who had raised the copper abort flag 8 years earlier. Her formal statement had never been attached to Garrick's accident inquiry. Severin opened it beneath the yard lamp. Medical abort raised at 4th breath. Quartermaster station acknowledged. Maker Garrick Beck entered after continued load caused visible wing root bleeding and rear leg collapse. The next line had been crossed through but remained readable. Maker ordered all personnel clear before cutting the inner release seam. Lorna held the page steady. He knew the platform might fail. The engineer examined the old platform diagram. He positioned himself between the rear anchor and Varkos's trapped wing. Why there? Severin asked. To keep the collapsing post from driving into the joint when tension released. The final statement continued. Dragon cleared falling frame. Maker struck by rear anchor after directing mount toward open yard. Elise read over Severin's shoulder. A healer's statement records what she observed. It does not establish that the release was the only available response. No, Lorna said. It establishes that Garrick saw the dragon failing, cleared everyone else, and chose the place where the falling structure would reach him before it reached Varkos. The old accident finding had called it panic. The buried medical statement called it a controlled emergency release. Severin ordered Garrick's negligence judgment removed from the active record and replaced with pending exoneration before the full inquiry. Lorna's face hardened. Pending? The quartermaster authorization chain remains open. Then do not call the work finished. I did not. The Western riders returned before dusk. All 3 dragons landed without bleeding. The first combat use of Lorna's humane frames had succeeded where the command model claimed pain was necessary. The archive clerk unfolded the back page of the healer's statement. One final notation had been added after Garrick's death. Witness excluded from accident hearing by quartermaster objection, emotionally compromised, and outside command authority. The excluded witness was Lorna Beck. The yard had not merely buried Garrick's reason for cutting Varkos free. It had kept the one person capable of reading the saddle from entering the room where his guilt was decided. The yard had excluded Lorna from the hearing because she could read the saddle better than the officers who judged it. By morning, High Rains Yard had become a court. The ruined royal saddle, Garrick's accident frame, the anti-release trial cards, healer logs, retirement ledgers, and scar-targeting manual lay across 3 inspection tables. Varkos rested beneath an open shelter, with his wings supported in Lorna's widened straps. He knew nothing of the hearing. He only knew the biting frame was gone. Quartermaster Elise Parr stood in full uniform before the assembled riders, healers, harnessers, and royal clerks. Excluding a grieving spouse from a military accident review was lawful, she said. Emotional involvement compromises technical testimony. Lorna held the buried healer statement. You excluded the person who built the frame, knew the dragon's prior injury, and understood the emergency mark. She was also the widow of the accused maker. Grief does not erase anatomy. It can shape interpretation. So can promotion. A murmur moved through the yard. Severin stood beside the royal evidence seal without crown or ceremonial cloak. He had removed both before the hearing began. Read the original finding, he ordered. The clerk did. Negligent interference. Unauthorized release. Loss of control. Then the healer's statement. Medical abort acknowledged. Load continued. Maker entered after visible bleeding. Personnel cleared. Dragon directed toward open yard. Maker struck while shielding injured wing. The engineer added the platform calculation. Without Garrick's cut, the locking rib would have kept Varkos beneath the rear anchor when the platform failed. Would the platform have failed without intervention? Elise asked. Eventually. The side posts were already beyond rated tension. Eventually is not the same as that moment. No, Lorna said. At that moment, Garrick chose which body the falling post would reach. Elise faced the witnesses. Wartime decisions are not judged cleanly 8 years later. The trial sought a frame that would hold formation under attack. Garrick broke procedure. The platform fell. A man died. Those facts remain. So do the facts your office removed, Severin said. He placed his early reign approval sheet beside the accident finding. I accepted the modern command model. I allowed performance records to remain separate from wounds. I seized Lorna Beck's house after her designs challenged a system my seal had expanded. The admission did not absolve him. It placed his authority inside the evidence. Elise's voice stayed calm. And if this court condemns every harsh measure that protected the border, it will inherit the luxury of judgment because those measures kept it alive. Lorna looked toward the 3 dragons that had returned uninjured from Grey Pass. Pain did not protect the border yesterday. One successful patrol does not establish a military code. No, it proves pain was never the only tool. The clerk opened the final authorization chain. The original live trial bore the prototype master's control mark, the quartermaster station's acknowledged abort, and Elise's next morning procurement order. No line proved whose hand refused the healer's signal. But the record proved Elise's office received the warning, continued the trial, reproduced the frame, renamed injuries as resistance, and expanded scar-targeted fitting under her later authority. Severin looked at her. Did you know every dragon would bleed? No. Did you know some had? Yes. The healer summaries described manageable injury. Manageable by whom? By the war wing responsible for defending this kingdom. Lorna answered before Severin could. The dragon carried the wound. The office carried the word manageable. Ilias did not confess cruelty. She defended necessity until the end. I chose operational continuity, she said. Others may call that cold because they were not responsible for cities beneath hostile wings. Severin removed her from military procurement pending judgment on concealed injury reporting, unauthorized medical overrides, and falsified equipment classifications. He did not order her imprisoned for Garrick's death. The evidence did not prove murder. It proved a system she had chosen to preserve. Then he turned to Garrick's record. Enter the corrected finding. The clerk read it aloud. Maker Garrick Beck identified active harness injury during an acknowledged medical abort. He performed a controlled emergency release, cleared personnel, directed Varkos away from collapse, and died, shielding the damaged wing from the rear anchor. Negligence withdrawn. Maker privileges restored posthumously. Royal dishonor revoked. The words reached Lorna, 8 years too late. She did not weep for the court. She placed Garrick's broken ring mark beside the corrected page. He chose the dragon before the command. The clerk entered that line too. Severin returned the harness house keys and ownership seal to Lorna before every witness. She took the seal. Not his hand. Harness inspection leaves military procurement, he said. From this day, healers and independent makers hold equal authority to ground any dragon. Medical aborts cannot be overridden. Hidden pressure points, numbing compounds on command hardware, and anti-release ribs are prohibited. A new dragon welfare code was written into yard law. Every scar required a relief map. Every frame carried an exposed emergency seam. Every retirement report had to be joined to its healer record. No dragon returned to active service without independent clearance. Varkos was retired from war command. He would fly only if his body chose the movement, and Lorna cleared the harness. Months later, Severin came to High Rains Yard without an escort. Lorna found him beneath Varkos's left wing, holding a padded bridge while she checked the old puncture scars. "Higher," she said. He raised it. Not tighter. He loosened his grip. Varkos settled. Severin remained kneeling until Lorna finished. This time, the posture was not spectacle and not absolution. It was work he had returned to perform after the court had gone home. "You restored Garrick's name," Lorna said. "I corrected the record my throne preserved. You changed the law. I changed what I had authority to change. That is responsibility, not forgiveness. I know." He looked at the humane flight frame resting beside them. "May I learn why this bridge carries weight without touching the scar?" Lorna studied him. Months earlier, he had seized her designs and called compassion dangerous. Now he asked to understand the craft before commanding its use. She placed one end of the strap in his hands. "Hold it where I show you." He did. Varkos extended his healed wing into the morning light. Lorna did not promise Severin a place beside her, but she allowed him to remain beneath the weight he had once refused to see.